Hey guys, Caleb with Black Pearl Media. Thank you so much for stopping by. And in this video, we're going to be adding some very special creatures to our 3.8 gallon Pico reef tank. Let's get into it.
So what we picked up is this pair of clownfish that are considered designer clownfish because as you can see, they're not the average colors. There's a lot more white in there. There's some blacks. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Now, a frostbite clownfish is one of many different kinds of designer clownfish that are available on the market today. There's not just that normal Nemo pattern anymore. There's a ton of different options, from very inexpensive to extremely rare and expensive. And these are a byproduct of people who will breed captively, and different patterns just emerge over time, and certain characteristics stick and stay around, and there's constantly new ones being pumped out of the market, which are very interesting. Now that we got these guys home, we're gonna go through the steps of adding them into the tank and then giving them their first bit of food. So what I like to do is I go ahead and empty out some of the water in the bag and I float the bag. And one of the things I do is I like to fold the bag on itself to make it so that if the bag ever falls over, it acts like a flotation device and it doesn't allow the bag to become submerged in the water. The idea of this is to take that bag of water and slowly increase the temperature so that it matches your tank water. That way it doesn't shock the fish. You never want to just take a fish and plop it right into your water, because that sudden temperature change could really do a lot of damage and potentially kill your fish. For my method of drip acclimating fish is a little bit different than most. A lot of people will hook up a small tube and slowly drip it in over the next period of 30 minutes or so. But what I do is I do it manually. So I have this big turkey baster looking thing, and I will slowly drip the bag for maybe about 20 minutes. Now, obviously I'm not going to do this consistently. So what I do is I take 5-minute breaks. So every 5 minutes I'll fill up a whole turkey baster thing worth of water, slowly drip it into the bag, adding it, and I do that for about 15, 20, 30 minutes, and I will then go ahead and release the fish, and I've had great success doing it this way. At the end of the day, you want to just slightly add in your water to the tank's water from the fish tank store. That way all the parameters are slowly changed and it doesn't shock the fish at all as far as like salinity or any of your other levels in your tank. So once your fish have been drip acclimated and temperature seems to be good to go, you can now add the fish to your tank. What I like to do is I like to put a net down over a bucket and I pour the fish into the net, and then I take the net and I drop the fish right into their new enclosure, nice and safe and secure, and I do it as gently as possible. And before you know it, the fish are in and they're swimming around, and they seem to be really enjoying the new space. Now it's time to give them their first feeding. We picked up this baby brine shrimp because these fish are not very big. They're still considered pretty much juveniles at this point. You can keep this in your freezer, take it out and trim off just a little bit, put it in a little bit of tank water, let it dissolve, and you just pour it right in. And look at these guys enjoying their food. It's so much fun watching these guys swim around and taking all this food. They have quite the appetite as well. Look at them go.
All right guys, so it's been a couple days since we added the fish, and just want to let you know that they're doing very, very well. They're eating really well. They've adapted to their environment very well. They've explored the tank. They like to stay right at the front glass, especially when I'm close like I am now. I think they're thinking they're ready for their next meal, but in a small tank like this, I'm not trying to feed them every day. Very, very small amounts of food, and I feed them about every other day right now. I'll just kind of monitor them, see how they're doing. I might increase or decrease, depends on how dirty the tank gets. There's no other cleaner crew in the tank as of yet, but that's coming, so I hope you guys subscribe to the channel and wait to see what we put in here for the cleanup crew. It should be something pretty special. Now, the reason we got clownfish for this little tank here is because they are very, very robust fish. They're very starter friendly. If you guys are thinking about starting a tank, you should certainly consider clownfish. And if you are considering them, make them one of your first fish. They do help cycle the tank. This tank doesn't really need a cycle because it's all reusable materials for my 40-gallon breeder. But just to be safe, I was like, hey, we'll do clownfish. We've been wanting designer clowns for a long time. My wife and I, she's always been a fan of these frostbites and others similar to them. So when we went to the fish store the other day and we saw that they actually had a bunch of different options, but they did have the frostbites like we wanted, and they had them in a very small size. So that was something that was very conscious on my mind. This is not a very big tank, so you don't want to get, you know, a 3 or 4 inch clownfish to put in here because it's going to fill the space immensely. The old rule of thumb that I've always subscribed to is for every gallon of water in your fish tank, you should have 1 inch of fish, which is kind of weird, but you know, these guys are about a half an inch to 3/4 of an inch, and I got 2 of them, so that's 1.5 inches in a 3.8 gallon tank. So they're not overcrowded. There's nothing else in the tank. I have a few other ideas for critters to go into this tank, but as far as fish goes, I'm not sure if there's going to be any other ones, because I just don't want it to be crowded. You know, sometimes you always want to push the limits to your reef tanks, and people do that all the time. But in a scenario like this with a very small tank, I find that the simpler, the better. Worry about, less to maintain, less to think about, and just always enjoying the tank as is. I mean, these are cool creatures. You don't really need 100 critters in one little tank like this. It's kind of inhumane to the animals themselves, and you know, it just makes for the environment to be very unstable. I'm gonna try and keep this as simple as I possibly can, because I'm just straight up lazy. I don't want to be tending to the tank 24/7. I want to keep this setup as simple and easy as possible, so that hopefully you guys will understand that this is not out of the question for you, and that reef keeping is not that intimidating, and it's a lot easier than you might think. So I'll end the video there. I hope you guys enjoyed looking at the new creatures for the 3.8 gallon Pico reef tank. Can't wait to see you on the next one, where we get some cleanup crew and possibly start adding some corals. See you on the next one.